Hey everybody, David Bauders, CEO of Trade Hounds, and I'm here today with Paul Dabrowski. Paul is the Global B2B Manager for BigCommerce. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, David.
So, digital commerce, all things digital transformation is a big topic in the news these days. Tell us what's going on there and what's really prompting distributors and manufacturers to think about this.
Yeah, so the setting's kind of perfect, right? We're here at NAED and we're talking all things electrical distributors. We recently just surveyed about 400 of those buyers, the majority of those being contractors, and they're telling us they're adopting digital, right? Like over 80% of those buyers are going online. 52% of those buyers are actually discovering electrical suppliers through Google search. And there's a small portion of them that are just not using it at all, less than 20%. 7 out of 10 of those buyers are telling us that they're seeing Amazon Business or Grainger, about 100 different competitors, were being mentioned actually versus the actual distributor sites. And that's quite impactful because for many of the distributors, they thought they were only competing against traditional businesses, like branches down the road from them.
Right.
But they're not only actually, they're competing against, some of the big box giants that have fulfillment who can also get the product selection as well. And that's, kind of what we're seeing. Adoption of digital, struggle of distributors right now, trying to get customers adopting their sites. And we're finding that the distributor sites are hard to find, they're hard to use, and they're hard to buy from. So that's what needs to be solved right now. And that's where we come in with BigCommerce B2B. We're helping those companies overcome those challenges.
And I know you guys also work not just with distributors, but with manufacturers. Can you talk a little bit about that side of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that BigCommerce works today, we've got 12,000 B2B companies on platform, from 5 million in rev to about 60 billion in revenue. The mix of distributors by deployment type, 60% are distributors, and then we've got about 40% that go to manufacturers. It's like a 30-40% because we've got EDI in there and punch out we look at for the buyer side, so it's about 10% of that happening too.
Are there any important differences between what manufacturers are struggling with versus distributors?
Largely really similar in terms of they're trying to tackle like the macros. They're trying to tackle legacy technology right now, the digital investments towards solving for legacy tech, ditching it, replacing it with something that's cloud-based, more flexible. Also, they're investing in employee productivity, the same, and they're doing that to actually affect a better customer experience. And that's the third investment driver for many of manufacturers and distributors. As far as what features are needed for distributors and manufacturers, that does differ on platform, for sure.
One of the things that's interesting, a lot of the statistics you talk about and the trends are very impressive today, but if you think about all of the transformation that's going on demographically, we have about half of the skilled tradespeople retiring in the next 5 to 10 years, being replaced by Gen Zers who are basically on their phones all the time.
Yeah, or millennials like myself, too.
Bringing up the rear.
Yeah.
We've got, but these are folks who don't want to call their parents, let alone their supply house. And
yeah, they're texting their mom and dad. Yeah,
so how is that impacting the expectations of commerce experiences?
Well, look, we discovered there's about 190,000 contractors, right, that aren't actually buying from behind a desk. And so the distributor sites are made for the desk buyer. So we see that mobile has had this like kind of groundswell. If you're a surfer, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
You're about to be able to ride a really good wave right now in terms of mobile. And mobile is going to impact your ability to reach buyers, your ability to serve buyers who are, on the job site. So like those contractors who also tend to buy after hours. Mm-hmm. And so being serviceable, accessible 24/7 is a real point of why they actually buy from a company today. And mobile is driving that. The accessibility of mobile is driving that. But the websites, if they don't serve that, they're broken, right? They're losing customers.
We've done a lot of survey work at Trade Hounds asking our users, why is it that you don't use distributor websites? And some of the reasons they give are things you've already alluded to, just poor quality experience. They have just poor navigation. Their product data is poor. They're not discoverable. they don't show up in search. But there's some other reasons that I think are pretty difficult for a distributor to resolve. And our buyers on our platform, for example, say that they buy typically from 5 to 7 different distributors. They don't want to have 5 to 7 different logins, different navigation pathways, different experiences. And what they're really asking for in the TradeHounds app is a unified experience where we can take the advantage of all the investments that distributors made into their e-commerce sites and bring them into that single navigation pathway. What are your thoughts on how marketplaces and similar platforms can start to be part of an omni-channel approach for a distributor?
Yeah, I can see for that particular use case how valuable that is. The reality is that 90% of the buyer journey today is through online, right? They don't go to a rep. They're not going to the branch.
CSRs.
They don't want to. If they are, they're having a bad day if they have to call in. So the fact that you'd be able to distribute all of the products, all the brands, with the most accurate product information is extremely valuable. Absolutely, that would be the value prop. Because what we also found in our data set from those 400 buyers was about 7 out of the 10 reasons why they actually use a site was for time savings, for convenience. Mm-hmm. Exactly what you're going to solve there by putting all those products and brands for them to be able to select through. So
one of the big focal points for us has been, really using AI to be able to simplify the discovery process. So, for example, using natural language or image search, being able to quickly identify a product and then to directly connect it into the distributor branch inventory systems to surface where is that product now. Trying to kind of short circuit that whole Google search website then through that whole either phone call or digital navigation.
Yeah, so that tracks really well too. The buyers, they want to quickly be able to discover what it is that they're looking for, and that's the time savings, that's the value. And if you can do that through image search, that's very impactful. We know that a B2B buyer on the desktop goes to the search bar 40% of the time immediately when they land on a site. But when it's on mobile, the numbers are even higher. Now, when the buyers actually use search, that lifts conversion by 2 to 3 times. That's really impactful. So whatever you can do to discover the product and the most accurate product is going to pay dividends. And many leaders today undervalue search. And it's the number one feature, though, being used on a site today. Also, the impact that you have on an actual buyer, way different than you and I in our consumer lives.
Sure.
I'll give you an example. A B2B buyer, they can lose their job if they purchase the wrong thing. So on the product pages, when you're serving the product information back, you have to have the most accurate information for that buyer. When you do that, it also pays dividends, and they're more likely to convert with you. Second to this, once they've discovered that it's the right product they're buying, then they look at the price, then they look at availability. Is it my price? Am I going to get it in the time frame I need it? Then they convert, right? So those ideas actually of being able to discover products, right, more easily is going to pay dividends for any of the distributors. And I would invest in that all day, every day today, right? That's where I'd put my money into.
Yeah, it's interesting when we survey our buyers on the TradeHounds app, we ask them what causes you to select one distributor over another. Their buying criteria are very simple, and they're surprising to a lot of distributors. Number 1 is in-stock availability. Number 2 is geolocation of the product, proximity to the point of need. Number 3 is service quality or vendor reliability. And number 4 is price. And not surprisingly, when it comes to a lot of the spend in the MEP space, a lot of it's not very price sensitive. Fundamentally, these contractors, they're in the labor productivity business. When they don't have the right materials, work stops. And today they say they're wasting up to 40% of their time just trying to source material.
Yeah, I think the buyers get it. If I save you time, right, like I'm going to pay for it, and they're willing to pay for it. So absolutely, I can validate that. In our own survey data recently, we found that the distributors are not trading on price. If you talk about the differentiation, what differentiates a top performing distributor in electrical distribution or HVAC or industrial, it is not their price. It is not their selection. It's actually they're trading on the quality of their business and also on the buying experience, on the actual buying experience. And that's huge because honestly, I think many companies could get delusional over it has to be a price war.
Really
and it's not anymore. You're now trading on the digital experience, and here's how easy it is for a buyer now to switch. It's one click away to go to the next distributor. So that's going to hit your margins as a business, right? You're losing customers to a better experience. That is a moat that they're building around the customer now. And you really have to understand that's what's at jeopardy.
It's interesting because when we talk to the buyers on the Trade Hounds app, we find out that we ask them a basic question. How much do you like to do price comparisons in order to choose your supplier? They already told us it was the fourth criterion in general. Why aren't you doing more price comparisons? They said it's very difficult to make apples to apples comparisons. Distributors have different part numbers, they have different product lines. Sometimes they're interchangeable, sometimes they're not. Some distributors don't carry all the products that we need. So it's basically a giant headache for them, even trying to compare pricing between these distributors. What they basically say is if it's a big project, if we have really long lead times, yeah, price is going to play a factor, but over half the spend in the construction industry is needed in less than 48 hours.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I'll give you the example because we've specifically asked, what's more important to the buyers? Is it your customer specific price or is it some promotional price? Or, what do you want in this whole self-serve model? They specifically say, we're coming back to check our price, the one that we already negotiated. Right. Are we getting that? That's what they check first. If there's some promotional value that's better than what I get, you should be offering that. You should be making it as easy for that customer to be able to buy from you anywhere. So we work with a lot of companies to help them on the promotional aspect, on the customer specific pricing aspect. Look, these buyers don't want generic pricing, and they don't want to call you to get that either. Right. So you've got to make it really easy to do business with you. And if the competitor's doing that, that's way more valuable than just being able to compare prices. Because at the end of the day, customers really don't want to sit there and just
price shop.
Yeah, like who has time for
it's
that?
A low value.
So, right. I think that's maybe a misconception in the data set, potentially.
One of the things that we've been focusing on at Trade Hounds is how do we speed up the estimating and proposal cycle for our users. They're in the business of calculating a bill of materials, going out, getting the distributor pricing in order to be able to quote, win those quotes, and then convert them into jobs and revenue. And one of their pain points is that for a lot of them, they're doing that work of estimating and quoting at night. And so they're stuck navigating clunky distributor websites. What we're trying to do now is basically get them their pricing instantaneously through the app so they can quickly turn those proposals into wins for them in cash.
Definitely, yeah, that could be very valuable. We're doing something in the quoting space because we've looked at, what tools in AI are going to be effective at employee productivity. That's like the second driver in investments right now from the companies. And so we've actually created Big AI Quote Assistant. So it actually takes the buyer data, the product data, and builds out a quote with the email that can be automated for that rep. Because, the sales reps, they don't wake up every morning going, hey, I'm waking up this morning to go write a quote. I'm going to pull over on the side of the road today and go write a quote. They don't want to do that. But there's a human in a loop element, which is best practice. So they can review that or regenerate it. Also, it has a brand tone as well for them. So it gets really personalized quickly. And we've found that this could speed up quoting by 70%. Those are areas we're looking at efficiency gains for employee productivity today. Also, it could end up reducing full-time employee costs because the reality is for many companies, and I don't care if you're just a small distributor or a big one, if you're going to scale the business, continue to grow it, how are you going to do that? You're going to do that with headcount. Yeah. And offline sales are not tracking at the same rate as online sales. Online sales for B2B are growing 8 times faster than offline. So I'm going to put my money there, right? Also, I get automation out of it, and I'm going to gain on the cost savings here and on my employees. Maybe I have top performing sales staff and they need to go serve larger customers and hunt, bigger opportunities, and that could free up their time to go do that.
I think a lot of distributors don't understand how profitable online sales can be. I mean, there's a few features that we see, a few factors that we see at Trade Hounds. Number one, when they order digitally, there's essentially zero transaction cost. Number two, the pricing is better. Why? Because CSRs aren't overriding the pricing, coming up with their favorite cost plus number and wrecking the margins on things. So we're actually seeing those untouched transactions not only be much lower cost to serve, but also being higher pricing and performance.
Yeah, absolutely. If you layer in too the fact that they're going to go in and do that additional admin work themselves and they want to, they're going to go in and pay invoices. We have companies that collect more invoices than they ever did in the first month post-launch than they did in the previous year.
Yeah.
And those are the things that these companies didn't even think they would get that behavior, right, and that benefit from, but they do. And some companies choose to go online first, not for the transactional aspect actually, but for the operational gains in those workflows and paying invoices, right? Access to quotes. Maybe you've done a lot of offline quotes or offline invoices. You can surface those to the buyer portal or the invoice portal, and they didn't have to originate on the e-commerce platform. So that's the strategy we've taken that's really successful.
The last mile,
Yeah.
Personally, as you've gotten more and more involved in digital commerce, what was the big aha that you had that made you commit to it as a career?
For me, I started in B2B e-commerce before it was ever trendy. I did it out of necessity. See, I started, my first business was actually in being a distributor of vacuum technique product. And to get to market, I couldn't hire a whole bunch of salespeople. I had to get in front of those buyers, and I figured out how to do that digitally. For me, it was built out of necessity for my business at the time. To be able to compete in a market where you had very established relationships that ran very deeply in the sales motions. I just needed to be able to target those individuals that had the problems, and I could surface the right product at the right time, and I got very good at doing that and serving them digitally.
So I'll tell you about my aha moment that got me into the space.
Yeah.
So I was watching all these kids playing on their phone all the time, and they were just teenagers at first. And then I kept seeing how it kept going and going and going, how so much of their time was being spent literally on their phones. Then we started to hear the statistics about retirements in the skilled trades, and I thought to myself, this can only go in one way. What's non-negotiable here is the demographic shift. And what's also not negotiable here is the centrality of mobile devices in all of this. And so the question became, how do we get these technologies in front of a known demographic shift with the right people working on the right problem? And so we quickly got involved with the purchasing technologies. What were the platform connections that were necessary to turn that phone into the most seamless digital buying experience? And then Trade Hounds came along, and we were like, okay, Trade Hounds already has hundreds of thousands of users. A big percentage of them are the same people who are playing on their phones all the time. All we really have to do is unlock that commerce experience, a single commerce experience. They already said they don't want to have 5 different ones. And wow, that's sort of the solution to the problem. So that's what we're racing after right now, is figuring out how do we get distributors who want to outcompete in what I would consider to be a non-negotiable outcome. The non-negotiable part is not having 5 different sites, not having, a phone call experience. How do we get those distributors who are smart enough to realize the question isn't whether it lands in that spot, it's how do you outcompete in that scenario? And so that's what we're laser focused on now.
Okay, so that is cool actually. Your origin story actually, what year did that originate then
Around
for you?
2022.
Okay, so here I am in Germany, right? I am there in 2011. I took on a role to do product development for a German manufacturer, right? And it's all captured on HDTV. So it's kind of cool experience to have that all on film. I was much younger then too. My aha moment, now that we're talking about this, for the revelation of
Commerce.
B2B commerce, was after I developed those products, I had to get them to market. And to get it to market at the time, it was like, hey, here's this guy that's been here for 20 years, and he's got the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet on all the product data that goes into the catalog, into a print catalog. And I said, there's no way I'm gonna take a print catalog around and go sell these great high-tech products. I mean, we're gonna go use the internet. And it was this time frame too of where we were incorporating and I mean, we were ditching BlackBerry for iPhone. We were rolling out, products with iPad interfaces, and we had already figured out how to scale the apps on those iPad interfaces. So, why not use the internet for commerce? And so, instead of doing the traditional print catalog, and that's probably the year that we actually killed the print catalog and switched to a digital experience. Now, it wasn't perfect, and it was not what I wanted. I wanted the customer-specific prices. I wanted to have the right payments, be able to do net terms. There was a lot of things
You're
that
seeing way beyond the horizon
already.
Yeah.
And well, those were things we did very well offline. And it just became clear I need to do that online. That I can't have friction. I won't get the adoption. So when I left, actually, and we merged those, there was a merger acquisition that occurred, and I left Germany, came back to the States. I built my own company, and to get to market, I had to build my own sales engine, and I did that all online.
You resolved all those issues, basically.
Absolutely, and we started winning business, and the manufacturers came back and looked at the company after 2 years of that and said, how are you winning these customers in Germany? You're in the US, You took a big contract actually from us with our leading salesperson in Germany here. And I said, well, we did it online, and here we can show you. Well, they had all those branded sites were failing at this point that we stood up because they didn't ever resolve the friction points in the buying process. So they came back and we talked about creating this B2B marketplace and taking those failing branded sites and creating a marketplace like you're thinking of now. And it was going to be a social marketplace, right? The social aspect of it never really panned out for us because the scientists and who we were serving,
just not a tight community.
It was not that type of community to share it like that socially. So that part of it never took off, but the marketplace did in the sense that we were solving sales issues, in the workflows and also the customer issues at the same time.
That's one of the things we find really interesting about Trade Hounds is we talk about how do you juxtapose Trade Hounds versus a distributor or manufacturer e-commerce site. The thing I say is Trade Hounds has a culture. Trade Hounds has the culture of the skilled trades, the pride of work, the pride of careers and enterprise, entrepreneurship, all of that. That gives it a very different flavor in terms of how people adopt it, how people relate on the platform. I think that's really one of the next horizons is this kind of social, cultural dimension that kind of surrounds the commerce experience.
Definitely, yeah. I wasn't successful at creating that social marketplace, but it sounds like you guys have actually established that. We knew that back then that's what we needed to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Like we could figure the tech out. That wasn't the problem, but it's very difficult actually to get people to use the tech, right? So that was
let alone develop a culture.
Exactly, right? A thriving culture, one that's engaged.
Right, and that's one of the things we've been doing now is actually bringing on CSRs, OSRs, and even manufacturers, salespeople onto the platform so they can engage with their customers in a dedicated space. We see that that's another trend of the new generation is they want to buy from people they feel connected to. And so while we see the all the benefits of digital commerce, there is still this social layer that we think is still relevant in that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even to how we started the conversation, right? And by the way, what you created is amazing. And it sounds like an evolution too.
And still a work in progress for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, that's tech in general. Yeah. But the cool thing is that to be successful with your digital transformations as a business, right, you have to rely on building the culture of innovation, something that goes well beyond the horizon of your own career. So you're going to be dedicating actually the career to bettering the customer experience, right? The culture has to be, grown in that environment to do that. And you have to be able to take those kind of calculated risks to be successful. Now, you could have the biggest budgets, the best strategy, the best tech, and still fail at your digital transformations if you do not have the change management, if you don't have the capability to execute. And so that's why people and culture, is going to outweigh the resources of any kind of project. I can guarantee that.
I think one of the most interesting questions for marketplaces today is, what do manufacturers and distributors have to do to outcompete on those platforms? And typically that'll mean you have to have a social media manager. That means you'll have to have the commerce and PIM side of it all ironed out. And it's really a multiple front type of strategy. And I think the distributors and manufacturers who understand platforms are a reality, marketplaces are a reality, are starting to marshal the resources now to win at that, as opposed to just dabble in it.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think that it's dabbling at this level. Yeah. There are going to be experiments for companies, but I wouldn't call it. This is an actual business model. Marketplaces has really defined that, and they have a piece of the digital pie. It's not as big as branded sites, and it is growing, though, a little faster than branded sites, but branded sites still own the largest portion of the e-commerce space today.
For the time being. Anyway, Paul, it's great to spend time with you today.
This was exciting.
Appreciate all your insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much.